Good morning, and thank you for attending Police Headquarters. My name is Constable Carolyn DeClute, and I am here today to introduce Chief Mark Saunders, who will be providing an overview on Project Patton.
Good morning. Thanks for your attendance. Over the course of the past several months, the Major Projects section of the Integrated Gun and Gang Task Force has been engaged in an investigation into activities of a street gang known as the 5 Point Generals. This investigation was initiated based on the intelligence that led investigators to suspect that the 5 Point Generals were operating as a criminal organization and that they were involved in illegal activities that posed a threat directly to community safety. The resulting investigation was dubbed Project Patton. As the investigation progressed, it became apparent that this group had been involved in numerous violent offenses involving firearms, and further, that they were active in the sale and distribution of illegal narcotics. Over the course of 9 months, investigators gathered evidence on dozens of individuals affiliated to the 5 Point Generals, who we will allege were operating as a highly coordinated criminal organization. Those efforts accumulated early this morning in the execution of numerous search warrants and arrest warrants throughout the GTA. I can advise you that Project Patton has resulted in the arrests of 70 individuals and seizure of a significant number of firearms and large quantities of narcotics. The investigation is fluid, and there will be additional arrests. I'd like to acknowledge the efforts of the Integrated Gun and Gang Task Force, as well as our partner agencies, for their dedication and professionalism in carrying out these coordinated multi-jurisdictional operations. We allege that the 5 Point Generals are a dangerous street gang that, while having roots in the area surrounding Weston Road and Lawrence Avenue West, its criminal activities extended throughout Toronto and the GTA in Canada, the United States, as well as in the Caribbean. Our investigators are confident that Project Patton has effectively disrupted and dealt a significant blow to the hierarchy and operations of the 5 Point Generals. The persons arrested in this operation are all appearing today at the Toronto West Courthouse. The investigation is ongoing and will continue throughout the day. I can advise you that there will be a full media conference held here, Police Headquarters, tomorrow at 10:30, when specific details will be provided to you. I'll take a few questions regarding this particular operation right now. It's board day for me, and I've got board responsibilities. I will talk after the board meeting for other issues that you may want to bring up.
Chief, I know you said that there were guns and drugs with you. Is there a belief that they're responsible for any sort of other violent crimes, murders, assaults, that kind of thing?
Well, this gang had a definite, significant impact on violent crimes occurring across the city, but specifically within that area of the city, the west end of the city.
Will the charges reflect that?
Yeah, they will. They definitely will. We're talking about street gangs that utilize firearms for business processes, and have no hesitation in using firearms. And when we talk about our gunplay in the city, the street gangs play a huge, a massive role in that type of activity. So the ability of having highly trained investigators that understand street gang subculture lead to these kinds of investigations that do yield, I think, some tremendous and great results. Sorry, can I? Tomorrow there'll be a much higher account for that, but you'll see that there is a large number of firearms that we're talking about, a lot of contraband that we'll be talking about, and you'll be able to have a much better drill down and to see the type of carnage that this gang was capable of.
We've seen a spike in gun violence over the last few months, Chief. A lot of people in the city of Toronto are concerned about both fatal and just serious and critical injuries at the hand of the gun. Do you believe that taking down the 5 Point Generals will reduce the amount of gun violence? Because many people in the community are concerned.
No, there's no magic pill to community safety. Toronto Police, we play one strong element. That's the enforcement piece. But I really do think if we're going to get this right, and I've said this before, there has to be more holistic solutions. So at the front end, when these folks that we're arresting are environments where the decisions that are being made are not necessarily the best decisions, and one of the decisions that they will do is utilize a firearm to shoot other people. And then, of course, when that happens, the enforcement piece is what we will then get into and make the apprehension. But then when there's that incarceration piece, 90% of the people that we apprehend are being released. And so when you look at that, you have to say, if it's a good day that we're making these arrests, yes, because for the immediate effect, we are returning quality of life issues within certain communities. I think that's a good day. But I think if we're going to get it right, it's not just put in front of the Toronto Police Service's foots and say, here, deal with it. We have to work collectively as a multi-layered approach and using other resources to help. So the gunplay is a serious issue. Anyone that's going to shoot a gun in a city of 2.8 million is a concern to me, and it always will be. I've got highly trained investigators that will yield these types of results. But when we look at the numbers, and the numbers are indicating that really we have 5 more gun occurrences a month for this year compared to last year. That's not a tremendous increase, but it is still moving in the wrong direction. When we talk about victims being shot, it's 1 person more a month, which still is not a good day. We still need to figure out what we can do to reduce that. But to say that this is egregious and tremendously horrific compared to, I will push back and say, no, it is a concern. We are looking after it and working with communities. Hopefully we can reduce those numbers.
History of the 5-point generals, we've heard this name for years. Can you talk a little bit about, have you guys seen them change over the years? Have you seen a change of leadership? Are you arresting people today that were locked up before and then served time and were released and now are back behind bars? Just give us some context there.
It's almost a yes to every question that you've asked, Tamara. I won't get into the deep roots of the 5-point generals because I don't want to give them credibility. And when I start talking about the history of them, that gives them credibility. I'm not here to give... Yeah, but if I start bigging them up in the terminology, then I'm doing them a favor. I'm not going to do that. These are thugs that collectively use firearms to shoot other people, and it's a concern because it's lasted for a period of time, as with other street gangs. And so by giving them titles and talking about their history, I think does more of a disservice. But it does indicate that there is a problem because we have people that are collective in thought and they'll put a color or a tag or a label behind their activity, which is to be condoned by all of us.
Is there any connection between the playground shooting or any other high-profile crimes in this gang?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Is there a connection between this gang and any recent high-profile shooting crimes, say like the playground shooting?
Well, this gang is connected to a multitude of shootings, but to that occurrence specific, no.
Can you speak to any of those shootings, like any specific incidents that you're alleging they were behind?
Some more of the investigators and Deputy Chief Raymer will have a better account on that.
Are you alleging that all the people arrested today are associated with this gang or members of this gang?
They were involved in this intelligence-led, very surgical, very strategic investigation. So this was not about random arrests. This was very focal, and it was through the investigative efforts of some tremendous resources that our agency has that has associated them to this organization specific.
Will they all be facing criminal organization charges?
I don't know if they all will be, but this is what this type of investigation is. So the bountiful of people apprehended will have a segment within this organization.
Chief, I know you talked about the part of the city that they're associated with, but was their organization kind of further reaching than that in terms of all parts of the city or different, even the province, out of the country?
I spoke earlier. I said Toronto, GTA, Canada, United States, Caribbean. So there was a lens that or landscape that was much larger.
Chief, could you talk a little bit about the cooperation between all the forces to affect this? And as you just touched on a little bit there, did we start looking down and speaking into some of the people in the States and finding out perhaps there may be some links to how all these firearms are getting up to Toronto?
Well, I won't speak to the investigative techniques that were utilized to formulate who we were targeting and why we were targeting. I will say law enforcement, one of the things that law enforcement has done better now than ever before, because it's necessary, is the partnerships, the collaborative efforts. We can work a lot more seamlessly now as law enforcement agencies than 5, 10, 15 years ago. I think that the digital world has compelled us to do that. If we're going to enhance community safety, we can't start thinking in this silo type of thought process. And I think that that has benefited, so that when we do have situations like these types of investigations where we're taking down a large organization, the ability of pulling other resources in and utilizing them operationally has improved significantly. And when we look at all of these apprehensions that have taken place, all of these search warrants that have taken place with very low use of force utilized, I think that's a good statement to policing, its training, its collaborative thoughts.
Chief, does that also speak to the fact, is this gang, you can speak to this, have they been using technology that has been used to try to frustrate the police, to try and coordinate their efforts? You see perhaps some technology during this and then some warrants for that?
Yeah, I don't want to delve into that. I think tomorrow would be a better day to ask that question.
In what capacity are you alleging their activities reached Canada-wide and in the U.S. and the Caribbean?
Yeah, and again, we're drilling down a little bit too far for me. Tomorrow, there'll be a lot more clarity, because we're still investigating right now as we speak. We're still executing search warrants and executing judicial authorizations, and we want to give a clean picture instead of segments of the picture, so that you have an opportunity to tell the story better. And so,
broadly, even like drugs, like they were dealing drugs or dealing firearms internationally? Like, there's got to be a reason that you're saying they have connections to the Caribbean, the U.S.
Yeah, it's to show the scope of this particular entity that was investigated, that it wasn't just specifically local, and we're dealing with illicit drugs, and we're dealing with firearms, and we're dealing with gunplay. So. And
they're allegedly dealing with criminal organizations across Canada and in the U.S. and.
Yeah, that will be further elaborated tomorrow.
Two individuals are still outstanding in the Scarborough playground shooting. What's an update on that, and what's your message to those individuals?
I don't have an update on that, but we know who they are. The public knows who they are, and this is an investigation where a lot of members of the public and the community were outraged by it, and so there is no level of sophistication behind that horrible act, and my advice would be to grab a lawyer and turn yourself in. It's only a matter of time. I'm not concerned that they will be out for a long, long period of time. They will be apprehended. They're not sophisticated. So the best course would be to turn yourself in and start the judicial process.
Do you guys believe that you've got violence in the East End and even Pickering? This press conference is about violence in the West End. Is there something separate going on in the East?
Well, I wouldn't divulge that. We're gonna do our investigations, and our outcomes will do the talking. But I certainly would not put my playbook in front of the investigations that are taking place right now.
Last week we reported on a homicide in Parkdale, and we learned that it took 90 minutes for a car to be deployed to 103 West Lodge Avenue. Clearly, I mean, you're arresting criminals, alleged criminals here, but when we're reporting that this is the crisis of the understaffing situation of Toronto Police, I mean, the message to criminals is here's a man who was allegedly beaten to death, and the police didn't have a car to send for 90 minutes and couldn't even get to the scene for a number of hours. What do you see community members who are concerned about that kind of slow response time?
Yeah, and I was hoping that we would stay on topic with this particular issue, and I'd state, and you were here when I said if we could discuss that later, but I'm not going to let that occurrence define the Toronto Police Service when we have close to 2 million radio calls a year, and by and large we are there all of the time. Issues that are concerned, we investigate, we look into, and we figure out what can be done better. That is being looked at right now, and I will be able to provide a more comprehensive answer to that. As we modernize, and I'll be very clear, when I look at what is asked of my frontline people, the amount of calls that we have to do that are not police related. Why do I have officers guarding hydro lines that are down? So there are some questions that can be pushed back that we can have a more healthy discussion on. I need resources that are doing the right thing at the right time, and when we talk about the modernization plan, a part of that equation is that when most of the calls are non-emergency and we're tasked with those things, we need to take a look at that playbook, and we we need to fix that playbook and start deflecting those calls that we shouldn't be doing that we are doing right now. And listen, the loss of life is a concern. I'm glad that we made the apprehension, and we will look to see what we can do to better our response to any calls. But again, I'll be clear, to isolate and cherry pick a call and say that's a Toronto Police is inflammatory. It's wrong. The vast majority of times, and you've seen us in situations when we had the shooting with the two young kids, the response time and how we appropriately responded. When we look at Finch and Young, and within 7 minutes we had apprehension for mass casualty, that is a testament of what the norm is in the city of Toronto, and our response as well too.
Crew came on, there were 45 calls for service on the board.
And I'll tell you that a large number, as I said earlier, when I'm looking at calls and I'm seeing us responding to things that we shouldn't be doing, these are things that need to be explored. And so, again, if you want to take a call by call in isolation, I will outnumber you tremendously with what our response times are. And I will continue to tremendously outnumber you with your stance on our response to calls for service.
Do you guys believe you got the kingpins of the 5-point generals this morning? Like, are the upper echelon, has that been eliminated, would you say?
Yes, we have dismantled a significant portion of this street gang. All is not well, though. There's still a lot more work to do. There's still a lot more things happening right across the city, and we are taking an active role in doing our best to keep our city safe. Okay, last question.
You put a significant hit on this gang. Is there concern then that once these guys are dismantled, that another gang can step in? How do police actively work to prevent that from happening?
Well, there has to be a collaborative piece. We have to work in concert with other agencies to figure out what we can do to keep communities safe. It's not just about apprehension. If people think that this playbook is about running around and just arresting people, then that is centuries ago policing. There has to be other solutions that assist and help enhance communities. There needs to be more funding that's put into certain areas of our city, and I'm hoping that approach is something that we can coordinate with other agencies and entities. Thank you very much.
That concludes today's conference. Thank you for attending. As the chief mentioned, we will have a conference tomorrow at 10:30.